For many years, I thought it was my fault. No one told me so in words, but I felt it in the averted glances, in the silences that screamed whenever I tried to speak, in the doors that closed, even when I was hurt. Maybe it was because I was born a girl. Maybe because I existed. Maybe because no one ever taught me that a father's love shouldn't hurt. Out in the street, my father was a public figure respected, greeted with wide smiles, given Christmas gifts by the town hall, invited to speak at church events, dispensing advice as if he were a saint. A man of honor, they said, an exemplary father. But inside our home, he was something else entirely. He was the scrape of his slipper down the hallway past 10 o'clock, the slow click of the bedroom door opening in the middle of the night, the smell of stale tobacco and sweat, the shadow looming at the edge of my bed before I could pretend to be asleep. I was 6 when he first came into my room. Everything inside me froze. I don't remember what he said. I only remember the weight of it, the silent terror, the breath caught in my throat, and the feeling that the whole world had its back turned on me. The next morning, he called me Daddy's little doll, handed me a piece of chocolate, and smiled as though nothing had happened. My mother was in the kitchen, brewing coffee. Life went on. I convinced myself it had been a nightmare until it happened again and again. By age 7, I already knew what it meant to pray with my eyes open, lying in bed, in complete silence. I begged God to take me so many times I lost count, but he never did, and I began to believe that even God didn't want to hear me. The house I grew up in was beautiful garden, wooden furniture, clean curtains, but it was soulless. No voices, no affection. It was a home where we ate in silence, where no one ever held your gaze for long, where crying meant weakness and laughing felt like disrespect. My mother was made of silence. She stared out the window as if she expected something that never came. She never asked me a thing, never protected me. Sometimes I thought she knew. Other times I preferred to believe she didn't, because accepting that she knew would hurt more than anything. Whenever I tried to speak, she'd dismiss me as imagining things, scold me for watching too many soap operas, insist that my father was strict but fair. One day when I was 9, I ran a high fever and vomited after one such night. My mother took me to the doctor, who looked at me, then at her, and asked, "Has anything strange happened?" Mom smiled and called me just nervous, said I was always too sensitive. Sensitive. That word clung to me like a label. The sensitive one, the drama queen, the oddball. At school, I couldn't concentrate. Other girls talked about dolls or parties. I only wanted a corner to sit quietly. Once I aced a test. My teacher hugged me, a simple gesture that made me break down in tears. She took me to the principal's office, summoned my mother, who apologized for the scene, and dragged me home by the arm. That night, he didn't come into my room, which was worse. I lay awake until dawn, waiting for the slap of his slipper, and when it never came, I wondered what felt worse, the pain or the constant fear of it. That's how I grew up, terrified of growing up. By 11, I was tuned in to every footstep, every time of day, every tone of voice, every smell of booze. I became a soldier in the battlefield they called home. Then my sister was born. I was 12, and for the first time felt something beyond fear, hope. She was tiny, sweet, helpless, and for a moment, I dared to dream that maybe, just maybe, having a baby in the house would change things, but they got worse. Mom retreated further into her silence. She went about the house with the same empty stare. Dad continued to be lauded by the neighbors as a man of God. I watched my sister play with her stuffed animals, smiling at me with her baby teeth. And I knew that the day she was a few years older, he would want her too. That was the day something inside me broke for good. What had once been fear erupted into fury, fury mixed with desperation and urgency. I can endure this. I am already a shell, but she is not. He will not hurt her. He will not steal from her what he stole from me. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, paper and pen in hand, and began to plan the end of it all. But it wasn't time yet, and I was still just a girl no one would listen to. I started counting the days, not to escape, for I had nowhere to go but to gauge how long a soul could rot alive before dying. By 13, I was no longer a child, at least not in his eyes. I was a body, learning to avoid mirrors, to hurry out of the shower, to lock doors silently, to stifle my sobs into my pillow. At school, they called me smart, but aloof. Once the principal saw me and said I was always in another world. My mother waved it off as just teenage moodiness. Teenager, as if hell obeyed an age schedule. I spent recess under the staircase, studying, but really hiding so I didn't have to pretend I was okay. Some girls complained about strict fathers and missing parties. I heard them as if they spoke another language. I would have given anything to have a father who was only strict. Mine was poison and power. He didn't hit or shout. He was meticulous, charming to outsiders, looking at me as though he owned me, proud, to break me inside while the world knelt before him. The more he used me, the more invisible I became. I even stopped growing physically. My doctor called it stress. No one asked where the stress came from. No one ever asked. That prison had clean walls, floral curtains, neatly set dishes, but inside reigned terror. I learned to anticipate him, the slam of the gate, the tone he used speaking to my mother. If he called too sweetly, I'd hide in the bathroom, feigning illness. Sometimes it worked, sometimes not. And the worst part, the next day. Because he would treat me like a daughter indeed. Daughter taking me to the bakery, calling me his princess, buying me candy, proudly showing off my obedience. And I obeyed. When you grow up trapped in emotional captivity, you learn that being good is how you survive. I never yelled, never disobeyed. I knew too well what happened to girls who challenged their father. Once I overheard him telling men in the street about a niece who'd gotten pregnant as a teenager, calling her a whore who needed a beating. That day, I understood that to him, I was not even human. I was property, an object. At night, I'd have panic attacks awake, heart racing, sheets soaked with sweat, curled in the corner of the bathroom, pinching myself until bruises formed just to prove I was still alive. My mother, she never saw. Maybe sometimes she did and chose not to. That stung even more because the pain of abuse is one thing, but the pain of being unprotected by the one who should love you, that rips your soul to shreds. She dismissed it as that difficult phase. Difficult was waking up each morning. Difficult was walking with aching legs and forcing a smile for the neighbor. Difficult was watching my sister grow up, knowing that time was working against both of us. Each birthday of hers, I cried in the bathroom, knowing the day she neared his favorite age would be the day he came for her too. I'd watch her sketch little houses, smiling at me as though I were her whole world, thinking, the world will crush you too, my little one, and I won't let it. At 15, something inside me began to shift. I started writing letters I never sent. Journals I tore up in 1,000 pieces and hid in the school trash, afraid someone might find them. I wrote of pain, disgust, shame, the desire to disappear. I wrote names, dates, feelings. One day, a line escaped. If no one brings justice for me, I will do it myself. That sentence haunted me. For weeks reading and rereading it as if it were both promise and verdict. Around then, I first heard a dangerous name whispered by 2 men on the street, Johnny Marks, a cold, perilous name an ex-corrupt policeman turned violent vigilante, feared and whispered about as a debt collector of the worst sort. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with a fierce, frightening idea that gave me a spark of power for the first time. The thought that maybe I could stop being a victim. Over the next 2 years, I watched my father's business, papers, folders, late-night phone calls. I learned he laundered money under other people's names, took envelope payments with no origin. I gathered evidence secret photocopies, covert photos of documents, recordings of hushed conversations outside his office door. My heart pounded, but I never stopped. Then I made my move, an anonymous letter to the old bar where Johnny Marks sometimes showed up, filled with hard-proof addresses, schedules, copies of documents, evidence of bodies hidden by my father's dealings. No signature, only, "The man you seek hides behind honor, but his hands are stained with blood and money. He is not only a thief, he is a predator." Along with photos of him with politicians and another of me, 6 years old, forced to smile in his lap. On the back, "This is where it all began." I slipped the envelope into the bar's mail slot. My hands trembled, but my heart was calm. For the first time, I felt I pursued justice with my own hands, no gun needed, just the truth. 2 days later, he began to change. The man who once strode like a king started looking over his shoulder, arriving home early, refusing calls in public, blocking his office. And he never came into my room again, but that gave me no comfort, only dread, because I knew something big was coming. One stormy Saturday night it came. I was awake on my bed's edge, as I always was, when I heard tires screech and doors slam. I peered through the curtain slit. 3 masked, armed men, one wearing leather gloves, entered our yard without breaking in, using keys. Johnny Marks? I never knew for sure. They took my father in his pajamas and bare feet, without time to react. No glory, no audience. My mother shrieked in shock. "Why? Who are you?" I said nothing, not then, not ever. Police arrived at dawn, called it a possible kidnapping, but with no witnesses, no leads. It was soon forgotten. My father became a high-profile missing person. At church the next Sunday, they prayed for him, calling him a good man victimized by urban violence. I listened in silence and laughed, though it tasted of iron. Not joy, but relief. The breath returning to my lungs after more than a decade's imprisonment, the blood flowing back to my paralyzed fingers. Justice not by law, but by fate itself. That same week, I packed my things, fetched my sister from school, and told her we were leaving. My mother screamed, calling me ungrateful, crazy, destroying the family. "Family?" I said at last. "Family protects you, loves you, listens. You were none of those." I grabbed my backpack, held my sister's hand, and walked away. No fear, no looking back. Freedom isn't like the movies. No soundtrack, no clear sky, no rainbow finale. For someone raised in emotional captivity, it tastes of dried blood and hard-won salvation. It's strange, frightening, almost shameful at first. Those first nights away, I slept poorly, not because someone might enter my room, but because silence was too new. Silence that doesn't wound, and that confused me. My sister, 8 years old, thought we were on vacation. I let her believe it. I didn't want her bearing the weight of truth as I had. We moved to a small town where no one knew our name. We rented a tiny room with a makeshift kitchenette. I cleaned houses by day, studied at night. And at night, I cried alone in the bathroom, but these were different tears. Tears of release, as if my body was finally purging years of poison. My sister adjusted quickly, sleeping soundly, dreaming big, sketching houses with open windows. Every time she smiled, it was as though I reclaimed a piece of myself. Little by little, time healed my wounds, though the scars still stung when the wind blew. At 20, I entered university to study social work, to name pain and prevent girls from growing up believing hell was normal. There, I met Hyder different, not perfect, but someone who listened with a healing silence. When I told him my story, he didn't recoil. He wept, stayed, held my hand. For the first time, I didn't feel disgusted by a man's touch. It took months to let him hug me fully, years to trust, but he had patience, tenderness, courage. We married quietly at the registry office, my sister holding a flower she picked in the park. She was 12 then, already calling me my second mother, because that's what we became. Sisters by blood, mother and daughter by choice. After graduation, I worked in public shelters, but felt something missing. A place where girls like me were more than a statistic, a home where they could not just survive, but thrive. So I founded Casa Aurora, a refuge for girls who'd survived violence. It started small 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a lot of willpower. Over time, donations, volunteers, women with silent stories rallied to support us. Each new arrival carried a look I recognized, the hollow gaze of a childhood stolen. And to each I said, "You are not dirty. You are not at fault. You are not alone." Yes, some days I collapsed after work, trapped by memories. But I always returned because each girl who slept in peace felt like I too was being rescued. My sister grew up there, helping with homework, keeping the younger ones company, organizing games. At 17, she chose to study psychology, saying she wanted to heal what cannot be seen. Today, she counsels at the same shelter that saved her, strong, compassionate, attentive. She has the gift of making a child smile with a single look. Sometimes I watch her and wonder and think, if I hadn't done what I did, she wouldn't be whole today. That alone is justice enough. I needed no court, no headlines, no public confession. My justice came as peace. Peace in my chest, peace in sleep without barricading the door, peace walking down the street without stooping. When I look back, I see that little girl on the edge of her bed, fearing the sound of his slipper, and I say to her, "You survived, and now you guide others out of the darkness." My scars remain, some visible, some only I know. They don't vanish, nor should they. Over time, they've been renamed. Not wounds, but living proof. Proof that I endured, proof that he did not win. For many years, I thought scars were shameful, meant to be hidden under loose clothes, false smiles, practiced silence. But today I know a scar is what remains when you refuse to die. I did not die. I was reborn in every girl who took my trembling hand and then dared to smile, reborn in every night I slept without leaving the light on, reborn the day my sister first called me mom. I was reborn when I saw in her adult face the lightness I had been denied, and that I fought so she would have. I was reborn, above all, the day I let go of my hatred, not because he deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. Hate kept me alive for a time, my weapon, my shield, my scream, but it was too heavy to carry forever. Now when I remember my father, I feel neither pity, nor love, nor rancor, only distance, like recalling an old storm that nearly drowned me but taught me to swim. My mother died without ever admitting the truth. In her last years, she lived bitterly, silent, isolated, never asking forgiveness or looking me in the eye. Still, on her last day, I visited with a single flower. I stood by her bedside for 5 minutes and said nothing only gave her the presence she never gave me. Then I left, without tears, without anger, without debts. My way of saying, I survived, despite you. Today, the shelter is called Centro Las do Ricamico. We serve over 50 girls a month, some from afar, some placed by the courts, all arriving with that same hollow look, begging for care. They receive more than food and shelter. They receive listening, respect, loving boundaries, genuine protection, and above all, the chance not to be defined by their trauma. On Sundays, we gather on the porch, read old letters, share stories, and sit in silent solidarity, a healing. Silence rich with presence, unlike the silence of my childhood. Hyder, my partner, stands by me still, teaching every day that love is not control, that love does not invade, that love waits patiently. And my sister, oh, my sister, now a strong, bright woman. She says she survived because I was her shield, but I tell her she was my reason. Without her, I might never have fought. Sometimes we sit in the late afternoon, sharing coffee and toast, and she squeezes my hand. You changed my destiny, sister, and so many others. I smile a calm smile, free of burden, because in the end, that's it. My past did not vanish, but it no longer commands me. Today is the roots of the tree I have become, firm, flourishing, with branches open for other women to rest upon. Women who, like me, were treated as nothing. Women who, like me, learned that God's justice is sometimes silent but never fails. Women bearing shame, fear, silence, guilt, who need to hear from another woman something no one may have told them. You are not alone. What they did to you does not define who you are. If you've read this far, perhaps you've seen part of your own story here. Perhaps you were the daughter, the sister, or the invisible girl in your own home. But I want to tell you, you deserve peace. You deserve love without pain, to be heard without judgment, to be seen without shame. Your scars do not diminish you. They prove your strength. You can still be reborn. You can still love, create, begin again, and embrace. And if no one's told you that today, I'm telling you now, God has not forgotten you. You deserve nothing less than respect. If you've endured something similar, comment below. You are not alone.